Hello, Algebra 1. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. We are starting today on 8-6. I told you we're kind of going all over the place with this unit, but so we are going to be factoring trinomials when A doesn't equal 1. And we'll go over that a little bit more once we get into the unit and what that means. But we're going to start off today with a little bit of a review because I want you guys to see and pick up on a pattern here. So the first thing that I really would like you guys to do, and like I said, we're going to start here with a review. So what I want you guys to do is to start, I want you guys to multiply out these four binomials. So review of what we've done. I want you to multiply. I'm going to put multiply up here. Even though we should know that when I have two parentheses like this, x plus 2 times x plus 3, we know that that means we're multiplying. There isn't an operation in between that we see. And so when we don't see one, we can assume that that means there's a multiplication in between there. So what I want you guys to do is on your own, I want you to multiply x plus 2 times x plus 3. I want you to multiply x plus 1 times x plus 4. And then I'm going to skip a few, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to skip a few lines. And then I want you guys to do x plus 7 times x minus 3. And last one, x minus 4 times x minus 2. So if you can, or not, I know you can. So what I want you guys to do is pause it right here, multiply those out, and then come back and check to make sure that you multiplied those together correctly. So pause it right here, go multiply those out, and then come back. Okay, so you should have multiplied these out. I'm just going to write them out quickly. I'm not going to go through the multiplying process. So x plus 2 times x plus 3 should have gotten you x squared plus 5x plus 6. And then x plus 1 times x plus 4 should have gotten you x squared plus 5x plus 4. And then x plus 7 times x minus 3 should have gotten you x squared plus 4x minus 21. And then x minus 4 times x minus 2 should have gotten you x squared minus 6x plus 8. Now, what I want you guys to do, and I want you guys to think about right now, is I really want you guys to think about these couple of numbers. So I want you to look at my middle term. And then I want you guys to look at also your last term. And I want you guys to start thinking, okay, how does 5 and 6 relate to 2 and 3? And then keep going, and I want you to think about how does 5 and 4 relate to 1 and 4? And then how does 4 and negative 21 relate to 7 and negative 3? And last one, how does negative 6 and 8 relate to negative 4 and negative 2? So I want you to think about that for a second and think, well, for example, 5 and 6, how do those numbers come from 2 and 3? So take a second. If you need to pause this, pause it, but I want you guys to think about that on your own. How do those two numbers that I underline relate to the two numbers that are being multiplied? So what you should have picked up and thought about was that this number in the middle is always the sum of the two numbers. Like this one is 2 plus 3. This is 1 plus 4. This one is 7 plus negative 3. And this one is negative 4 plus negative 2. So your middle number is always the sum of the two numbers that are being multiplied. And then your last number, if you notice, is the product. So if the middle number is the sum, the last number is the product. So 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 4 is 4. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. And negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. So before we start anything new, I want you guys to see how it changes when you multiply something a little different. So if I give you 2x plus 1 times x minus 4, and then I give you 3x plus 5 times 2x minus 3. I want you again to pause here and multiply those out. So pause right now and multiply those out. Use the box method, use FOIL, whatever you need to do. But pause right here and multiply. So you should have paused, and now you're coming back to a screen where you're like, how did you do that so quickly? It's because I paused my screen too. But so what I want you guys to see here, and I did kind of do the extra step in these. The last number is still, exactly like it was up here. Negative 4 is 1 times negative 4. Negative 15 is 5 times negative 3. And even the outside number are the two numbers multiplied together. 2x times x is 2x squared. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. But what's different here is the middle term, negative 7x and x. Negative 7x is not 1 plus negative 4. What's happening is it's taking into account the a value here and here, or the leading coefficient here and here. We're going to talk about the a value. And then same with here. This is taking into account the 3 times the negative 3 and then the 5 times the 2. And so we have to take that leading coefficient into consideration when we're factoring. So we're going to start getting into factoring. But before we do, I want you guys to know what the standard form of a quadratic trinomial is. And that's what all of these are. So every single one of these is a quadratic, because the highest exponent is 2. Trinomial, 1, 2, 3 terms. 1, 2, 3 terms. So the standard form of a quadratic trinomial okay, so that is going to be so A, that's where our A is coming into play, x squared, and then my middle term, we call that B, so plus B x, and then my last term is C. So A is always the leading coefficient, ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is super important. I guess I'm just going to do this for us. Remind us that it's super important for us. Okay, so we are actually going to get into factoring. And like I said, like before, this factoring is going to follow you for a long time. I mean, it's something we do a lot. We do it in honors algebra 2. You do it in regular algebra 2. You do it in geometry. Like you see it in a lot of your math classes. So it is super important that you make sure you're getting it. Some of you guys might have seen factoring before, and that's great. Some of you guys might need a refresher. Some of you guys who have seen it might do it a different way. If you do it a different way, that's totally fine. But if you prefer my method, then that's great too. So we are going to start by factoring. And the first problem I'm going to factor is going to be 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. So notice a is greater than 1, or a doesn't equal 1 like our title says. So to take that into consideration, like we have to up here, what we do is we always start with, some people will call it like the magic x. I don't. I just call it the X method. But some people will call it the magic X, or there's a lot of different ways that you can hear it. But what we do is we set it up. I draw kind of like a big X. And then on top, the number that goes on top is going to be a combination of two of my numbers here. And so that combination is going to be, I'm getting my color, sorry, is going to be the 2 times the 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. And then the number that's on the bottom, is always going to be my B value, 11. So what we're going to do is we are always going to be thinking the same thing over and over and over. So your first thought is going to be, what numbers multiply to get you 10? But also, so there's like an additional consideration here. So what numbers multiply to get you 10, but also add to get you 11? So we're taking that number into consideration too. So you're thinking, what numbers multiply to get you 10 and then also add to get you 11? Well, we have to think. We know, like, you can go through the list of what numbers we know multiply together to get us 10, and we can kind of go through that process. We know, okay, I'm sure most of you guys are thinking 2 times 5. We know that gets us 10. But 2 plus 5, well, that gets me 7. So that doesn't work. Well, what other two numbers multiply together to get me 10? Well, 10 times 1 gets me 10. And then, well, what about 10 plus 1? Well, that gets me 11. That's great. That's what we wanted. And so where those two numbers, 10 and 1, are going to go is right here. So 10 and 1. And so now what we're going to do, now notice like up here, we always have it like split into two terms. What we're going to do is use these two, and we call this, like I call this method splitting the middle term. So we call it splitting the middle term is because the only thing that we do and the only thing that we change is the middle term. So we're going to rewrite this entire thing. We're going to keep it as 2x squared. 2x squared isn't changing, but instead of writing 11x, we're going to split it into two terms. We're going to split it into 10x and 1x. And then the plus 5 stays the same. So we're splitting the middle term. I'm going to write that up here, because I often will refer to it as splitting the middle term, like method or split the middle term. Okay, so now what we have, do you guys agree that this like polynomial is the same as this? 10x plus 1x is still 11x. We just split it up into two separate terms. Okay, so now what we do, we have 4 terms. And so what we use is the method that you guys have already learned. We use factoring by grouping. So what we're going to do is we are going to take it into two groups, just like we do with factoring by grouping. So 2x squared plus 10x, I think about what's my GCF there? Well, I can factor out a 2x, and I'm left with, so 2x squared divided by 2x is x, and 10x divided by 2x is 5. Remember, I always bring down my middle sign, plus, and then I think about what's my GCF between 1x and 5. Well, there's nothing that goes evenly into 1x and 5, so we can always take out, remember, if there's nothing that goes evenly into those numbers, we can take out a 1. And I'm still left with x plus 5. Now, it's great because these are the same. That's what we wanted. And if these aren't the same, just like it was when we were doing, like when we started factoring by grouping, if these aren't the same, you've done something wrong and you need to go back. And I would go back to here and make sure that this is all correct. Okay, so then we can rewrite it as our factored polynomial. So it's going to be 2x plus 1 times x plus 5. If you write x plus 5 times 2x plus 1, that's completely fine too. And that is my final answer. Now, if you're like, wait, I don't trust you, that's not my final answer, that's fine. We can check our work. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to move this and then do this a little. Sorry, just rearranging so I can write better. Okay, so we're going to just check it right here by multiplying. Okay, so 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 5 is 10x. 1 times x is 1x. And 1 times 5 is 5. Which I know is surprising, but it's exactly that, is this right there, right? This and this are the two same things. And then we combine our like terms. 10x plus 1x is 11x. And that is exactly what this is, 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. So we're good. Okay, so if you were like, what was that? What happened? We're going to do a lot more examples today. We're going to kind of, do a lot of practice with these. And then again, you guys can always bring them to office hours. Office hours are going to be, first period is Wednesday and Friday from 2 to 3. And second period is Tuesday, Thursday from 2 to 3. So come stop by, ask me questions. Hopefully we can get those questions answered. But I'm going to flip my page now, and I'm going to do some more practice problems with you guys. Okay, so we are on 2. And so that's going to be 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. So the first step is always the same. There's nothing like crazy with this. We always start the same way. We draw our x in. And then remember, what goes on top is a times c. So 2 times 12. 2 times 12 is 24. And then my bottom is my b. Bottom is b, 11. So once you have that set up, now you're starting to think about our question. Your question is like, it's going to be super repetitive. What numbers multiply together to get you 24 and add to get you 11? So I'm going to write that. So what number multiply to get you 24 and add to 11. So the top is always what we're trying to multiply to get, and the bottom is what we're always trying to add to get. So multiply on top, add on bottom. Now, if you just like we did on that first one, if you like to list them out, like what numbers do we know multiply together to get me 24 and see if those add, then list them out. But if you don't need to do that, then just skip to the next step. But we're going to list it out. I'm only going to do that a few more times, and then we'll just do it in our heads. But, we can think about what do we know multiply together to get us 24? Well, 6 times 4. We know 6 times 4 gets me 24. And then we see, does that add to get me 11? 6 plus 4 is 10. Well, it doesn't. So we're going to cross that out because that isn't going to work for us. Now, I could keep going. I know, okay, well, what about 2 times 12? That gets me 24. But does 2 plus 12 get me 11? No, it gets me 14. So I know some of you are screaming at the screen right now, and you're like, Mr. Imperio, it's 8 times 3. Because 8 times 3 gets me 24. And then what's 8 plus 3? 11. So those are my two numbers. We could have tried 1 and 24. I think that would be all that we could have tried. But so our numbers are 8 and 3. So at this point, once you've gotten your two numbers, this is when we split the middle term. So remember, your 2x squared stays the same, but 11x is what's being split into 8 and 3. Now, it doesn't matter what order you write these in. If we wrote 8 first and then 3 second, that's fine. If we wrote 3 first and 8 second, that's fine too. What I usually think about is what goes better with 2, 8 or 3. And 8 does. And what I mean what goes better with it is what's a number, like which one is, they have something that can be easily factored from both of them. So I'm going to put 8 first and then 3x plus 12. And then I can start to, I can factor by grouping. So we split up our two groups. 2x squared plus 8x is one group, and 3x plus 12 is a second group. So 2x squared plus 8x, what's my GCF there? So I know I look at my numbers and I look at the smaller of the two numbers. The smaller of the two numbers is 2, and so I think, does 2 go also evenly into 8? And it does. And then I can factor out, they both have an x, so the smaller of the two is x. So 2x squared divided by 2x is x, and 8x divided by 2x is 4. My middle sign always comes down. I bring that plus down. And then I think, what number goes evenly into 3x and 12? Well, we know it's 3. 3x divided by 3 is x, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. And so what has to be the same? Remember, these have to be the same. X plus 4 and x plus 4 have to be the same, and they are. So we're good, and we can rewrite it. 2x plus 3 times x plus 4. Again, if you wrote it as x plus 4 times 2x plus 3, that's fine. Whichever order you want is totally fine. Remember, you guys can always check to make sure that you did it right by distributing. Okay, so this next one, what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to try it on your own, see how you're feeling. Maybe you can start the setup on your own or whatever you need, or maybe you can do the whole thing on your own, but once I write it down, pause it and try as much as you can on your own. So we have 6x squared minus 13x plus 6. So pause here, try maybe just the setup, just doing the x. Maybe you can get to the two numbers. Maybe you can do the whole thing, but pause here and try it on your own. Okay, so you should have tried as much as you could. Maybe you didn't know how to do any of it. That's okay. We're going to do it together right now. So I am going to start by always drawing my big X. Now the number that goes on top, remember, is A times, I went way too far, but A times C. I just got overzealous with the curve there. There we go. Okay, so A times C, 6 times 6 is 36. And then what goes in the bottom is negative 13. Oh, this is a little bit more challenging. So we're thinking what numbers multiply to get 36 and add to get negative 13. Now, this is a little bit more challenging. The reason why is because we have a negative number in the bottom, but a positive number on top. Now, I want you guys to think, what types of numbers can we multiply together that would multiply together to get me a positive number, but then add to get me a negative? So it's kind of I don't know what type of numbers. Well, we only can think about, it could be either a positive and a negative, or a negative and a negative. Well, a positive times a positive gets us a positive. But a positive number plus a positive number is always going to get me a positive number when I add them together. Now, a positive times a negative would get me a negative number here. So that's not even part of the question. So what we're thinking now is, what about a negative times a negative? Well, a negative times a negative is going to get me a positive number. Negative times a negative is positive. And then here, a negative plus a negative gets me still a negative number. So my two numbers that I'm thinking about here are going to be negative. So I start the process. I think about, what are my two numbers that multiply together to get me 36 and add to get me negative 13. The first I thought about was 6 and 4. So remember, we're thinking two negatives. So negative 6 times negative 4, we know gets us, no, that was dumb. Not negative 6 and negative 4, negative 6 and negative 6. That was a moment for me. Okay, so negative 6 times negative 6 gets us positive 36. But negative 6 plus negative 6 gets us not negative 13. It gets us negative 12. So we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to start thinking about our other two numbers. So other numbers that multiply together to get me 36. What about negative 9 and negative 4? Negative 9 times negative 4 is 36. And negative 9 plus negative 4 gets me negative 13. So this one didn't work for us, but this one did. So those are my two numbers we're going to use in my x, negative 9 and negative 4. And those are my two numbers that I'm going to use to split the middle term. So if you couldn't get there and you're like, but I get the splitting the middle term part, then pause here and go from here. But if you are still needing help with splitting the middle term, then you can, keep it unpaused and we'll just go forward. So remember, when we're splitting the middle term, the 6x squared stays the same, but we split the middle between my two numbers. So negative 9x minus 4x, and then the 6 stays the same too. Now, I could have switched it up and put the 4 here and put the 9 here. It doesn't matter. Like, you can switch it up and see, you'll still get to the same answer. And so now is when we factor by grouping. 6x squared minus 9x and negative 4x plus 6 are my two groups. And I think about what's my GCF between 6x squared and negative 9x. Well, it's not 6. 6 doesn't go evenly into 9, so I have to think of something smaller. So that smaller number is 3. And then they both have an x, so I can factor out an x. So 6x squared divided by 3x, well, 6 divided by 3 is 2, and x squared divided by x is x. And then negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, and x divided by x goes away. Remember, you always bring down your middle sign, so negative comes down, and I think, again, what two numbers, or what number divides evenly into 4x and 6? And so that number, well, it's not 4. 4 doesn't go evenly into 6, so we have to think smaller. That number is 2. Now remember, we're dividing a negative 2 from both terms, so that's going to change my sign. Negative 4x divided by negative 2 gets me positive 2x, and 6 divided by negative 2 gets me negative 3. Now, are these the same? And yes, they are. So my final answer is going to be 3x minus 2, and then times 2x minus 3. Again, you guys can multiply that back together to make sure that you got the right answer. But other than that, that is that. Okay, so we're gonna do one more, maybe two more. Let's see. It's hard to see when I don't have you guys telling me, we get this, this is so much fun, I know you're not saying that ever, but this is so easy, we get it, but me just like not knowing. So I miss your guys' faces. I miss you guys so much. So okay, if you're feeling confident, feeling really good about this, pause it here, or not pause it here, pause it after I've written down the problem. That would be weird. And try that one on your own. But if not, we can still keep going together. So my next one is going to be 3x squared plus 2x minus 16. So again, if you're feeling confident, feeling good, pause it here. If you're not and you need some more help, then we'll do this one together. So we start off always the same with that big X. Now remember what goes on top? If you're saying A times C, which is 3 times negative 16, then you're right. So 3 times negative 16, that gets me negative 48. And then what goes on bottom? What goes on bottom is B is 2. So we're thinking, oh no, there's another twist in this again because there's a negative on top. So we have to kind of go back to the drawing board. We have to think what two numbers are going to multiply together to get me a negative, but could possibly add to get me a positive. Well, the only two types of numbers that are going to multiply together to get me a negative, I can't do a positive and a positive. A positive and a positive always gets me a positive. I can't do a negative and a negative because that same thing always gets me a positive. So what we're looking for is a positive and a negative number that's going to multiply together. So that's going to be our question. What numbers multiply to get negative 48 and add to get positive 2? Now, if you are really good with thinking about your numbers, you're going to know if I'm multiplying together a positive and a negative number, but I'm adding them together to get a positive, which type of number is going to be bigger, the positive or the negative? And if you're saying the positive, you are correct. The positive number has to be the bigger of the two. Now, if that doesn't make sense, that's okay. You can just do trial and error. So we're trying to think what two numbers are going to multiply together to get me negative 48 and add to get me 2. Let's start with thinking, what numbers do we know? Well, the first ones that come to my mind are 12 and 4. So we know that the positive number is going to be the bigger one. So I'm going to do 12 times negative 4. So 12 times negative 4 is negative 48. But what is 12 plus negative 4? Well, 12 plus negative 4 is positive 8. So that one doesn't work out. Now, if you know your multiplication facts really well, then this isn't that difficult. You know which two numbers it is. You know, okay, this one didn't work out, but what numbers are going to work out? Well, 6 and 8. Now we're going to keep 8 as the positive. 8 times negative 6. 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. And 8 plus negative 6 is positive 2. Now, if you were like, let's switch it around, negative 8 times positive 6 still gets us negative 48, but negative 8 plus positive 6 would get us a negative 2, which isn't this number. So that's really important that the signs are like working for you. So then we split the middle term. Actually, we'll write those here, 8 and negative 6, and we use those to split my middle term. So 3x squared stays the same, but 2x is split between 8 and negative 6. Now, remember what I was saying before. It doesn't matter, but I like to think about what number goes better with 3, 8 or negative 6. And if you're saying negative 6, I would agree with you because we know a number goes evenly into both of those. And then 8x minus 16. If you didn't do that and you like switched them around, that's fine. You're still going to get to the same answer. So 3x squared minus 6x is my first group, and 8x minus 16 is my second group. Okay, so I think about what number is going to factor evenly out of 3x squared minus 6x, and that's 3x. And I'm left with x minus 2. What number factors out? Well, I bring my sign down. And then what number factors out of 8x minus 16? And that's 8. And I'm left with x minus 2. These are the same. That's what we want. They always need to be the same. And so I can write my final answer. My final answer is 3x plus 8 times x minus 2. Okay, I'm going to do one more problem. With that one more problem, what I'm going to do is I just want to show you all the different possibilities of signs. So the last problem that we're going to do, and again, if you're feeling confident, you guys can just write down the problem and do it on your own and, just check your work. But if you need that extra assistance, that's fine too. Okay, so my last problem is going to be 9x squared plus 6x minus 8. So if you're feeling good, pause it, try it on your own. If not, let's do it together now. So, looks like my pen's running out. On top, remember on top goes 9 times negative 8. 9 times negative 8 is negative 72. And then what number goes on the bottom is that positive 6. So my question always, what numbers multiply to get negative 72 and add to get 6? Okay, so I'm thinking, what are my two numbers? Well, sometimes negative 72 is a hard one, right? We can think about, okay, well, what about 9 and negative 8? 9 times negative 8 is negative 72, but 9 plus negative 8 is 1. That doesn't work out. Even if I were to switch the signs, negative 9 plus 8 is negative 1. So I have to go back to the drawing board. I have to think about what other numbers multiply together to get me 72. Now I think, okay, what about 6? Well, let's do 12 times negative 6. And now remember with this one, same as up here, I'm making the smaller number negative and the bigger number positive because this one is adding to get us a positive number. So 12 times negative 6 is negative 72. And then what's 12 plus negative 6? Oh, that one works out. It's 6. So this one didn't work out for us, but this did. So my two numbers are 12 and negative 6. So last step, and probably the one that you're now most comfortable with, is splitting the middle term. So 9x squared stays the same. And then I think, what number goes better with 9, 12 or negative 6? Well, both pretty much go really well with it, but then I think about, what about 8? Well, 12 goes better. I mean, they both go fine with it, right? So it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put negative 6 with 9. So negative 6x plus 12x minus 8. But if you switch them around, it doesn't matter. Like, you're still going to get to the same answer. And then I would factor by grouping. So what number goes evenly into 9x squared minus 6x? Well, we know it's not 6 because 6 doesn't go evenly into both 9 and 6. But so we've got to go smaller. It's 3x. And I'm left with 3x minus 2. And then I think about, well, what number goes evenly into 12 and negative 8? Well, not 8 because 8 doesn't go into 12, so I have to think smaller. So my next smaller number is 4, so I'm going to bring plus 4. So 12x divided by 4 is 3x. Negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. Are these the same? Yes, they are. So we're good. We can write our final answer. 3x plus 4 times 3x minus 2. Now, sometimes the hardest part of this whole thing is not like the splitting the middle term part, because I think like after a while you guys get comfortable. Sometimes what's really hard is figuring out those two numbers that multiply together to get you, like that multiply and add. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a multiplication chart that you guys can print out or look at, whatever. And so it might kind of help you to see the numbers and the possibilities that multiply together. And so you can like list them out or don't list them out, whatever you need to do. So again, if you guys have any questions about any of these problems, star them, write a note, do something, and then bring it to office hours this week or whenever I see you guys next. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or good rest of your evening whenever you're watching this. And I will see you soon.